What's up, everybody? My name is Ryan Thomas. You're tuning into the Thomas Take Sports Podcast live on Spreaker.com, Facebook, YouTube, and obviously Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Thomas Takeover. My followers has reached 250. I'm not too happy about that. I just got to the Twitter game, really, just finally starting to get used to it, and I want more followers, for sure. So get on there, follow me, covering all 32 picks in the 2018 NFL Draft. This is not just a Buffalo Bills podcast. This is a sports podcast. You got NFL, you got MMA, you got MLB, you got NHL. I cover all of it. There's no stone left unturned on this show. So we move forward in the 32 picks in 32 days segment, and we are on the clock at 9th overall. We're talking about the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners are moving on up. They picked second last year, traded back to the third overall pick, and now they're picking 9th. They moved on up the draft board due to a move that I think will greatly change the fortunes of their franchise, as it already has. And that was the trade for former New England Patriots quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, giving up a second-round pick for Jimmy G, the heir apparent to TB12 Tom Brady. And originally, for a while, the speculation was that Jimmy Garoppolo was probably going to go to Cleveland or was probably going to go to a team that was really, really, really bad. And I'm not saying that the Niners weren't really, really, really bad, but at least with the 49ers, you know that you have some competent people running the show, which at first, when the 49ers announced that they were hiring John Lynch as vice president of pro football operations or president of football operations, he's the head man. He's the guy that runs the show. He brings in the coaches. He brings in the players. He's running the San Francisco 49ers. Initially, I thought, wow, this is a great move. He's a guy that knows the ins and outs of the game, arguably a Hall of Famer, had a great career as a safety in the National Football League. And I really liked John Lynch as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Denver Bronco, wherever he was. He was an impact player, and there was so much skepticism and haters and critics out there that said this move is stupid because the Niners are hiring a guy that has no NFL experience as a personnel man. No NFL experience. You mean to tell me that John Lynch, as I said, arguably a Hall of Famer, probably will be in the Hall of Fame, has less, quote-unquote, personnel experience than Doug Whaley, one of the worst GMs, or, quote-unquote, Chip Kelly? You mean to tell me that John Lynch doesn't know as much about football as those guys, or not, if not more? Very shocking to say the least, that there were so many haters out there for John Lynch saying that he didn't know enough about football to be a GM. Pretty damn stupid, if you ask me. Really stupid. I knew when they hired him that this would work, and the reason why I knew it would hire him the reason why I knew when they hired him it would work was mainly due to the fact that this guy has lived and breathed football his entire life, really, from Pee-wee till now. So how could people hate on that? How could people say, well, he might not be that experienced enough to have that role? I'd flip two birds if I was John Lynch at those people. Put up two birds and say, watch me now. And some of us, in the NFL circles, are saying, I see you, John Lynch. I see what you're doing. You go out, you get Jimmy Garoppolo. You signed Jerick McKinnon this offseason, which I think was a fantastic move. Jerick McKinnon has been a really, really underrated running back. He worked wonders for the Minnesota Vikings this past season. You could ask Case Keenum about Jerick McKinnon, and he'd probably, say, well, he's the reason I got, the money that I got. One of the reasons. Case Keenum was leaning on that run game, not turning the ball over. Jerick McKinnon steps in as Dalvin Cook goes down with a torn knee. Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray both go down, and Jerick McKinnon, I meant to say Dalvin Cook went down, and they got rid of Adrian Peterson. Jerick McKinnon goes in and did very well. They paid him, which, people are saying, well, he was overpaid. Maybe so, but he's been great. He earned that contract, right? So I think the Niners are on their way, slowly but surely. They got a quarterback. They signed a wide receiver last year, former Buffalo Bill, that was so injury-prone. As a Buffalo Bills fan, it was so frustrating for me to watch this guy get hurt time and time again, that as a Buffalo Bills fan, I thought, man, they really need to let this guy go. They let him go, and he had a career arrival, not a resurgence, an arrival with the 49ers, Marquise Goodwin. This guy was a glorified kick returner, punt returner, deep ball guy. He goes to the Niners, they get Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's running every route in the route tree that you can think of, and getting numbers, putting up numbers each and every week. He was a top 20 fantasy wide receiver by season's end, within the last, I think, 4 or 5 weeks of the season. That is insane. That is unfathomable that they've taken one-dimensional talent, to be quite honest with you, although he's shown up for the Niners, one-dimensional up to that point, I should say. They've taken one-dimensional talents up to that point and have made them multifaceted, talented players with what they have built. And I appreciate that. Last year, they drafted Solomon Thomas, who was one of my favorite players in the last year's draft. And I think he's just going to be fantastic. Stanford guy, did everything right throughout his college build up to his pro career. And realistically, I think that they're going to stay on that same side of the ball. John Lynch is a defensive guy. They go out 9th overall. Commissioner Goodell they hand the card to Commissioner Goodell. And I think at this point, a safety takes a safety. What I mean by that is John Lynch takes unequivocally, Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think, is the most talented defensive back. Derwin James is the most special defensive back in this draft. And what I mean by special, his potential is just through the roof. To choose Fitzpatrick over James, it's very tough because their skill sets are so close. But Derwin James is a guy that's coming out early, but he's got a lot to go on. He entered his true freshman season at Florida State in 2015 as a backup, but eventually became a starter. As a freshman in 2015, James played in 12 games with 91 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 4 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. Before his sophomore season, James was ranked as the 3rd best second-year player, behind only Josh Rosen, Calvin Ridley. And that was by Lance Zierlein of NFL.com. On September 16th, 2016, it was revealed that James would undergo knee surgery to repair a lateral meniscus tear and cartilage damage. Recovery time required 5 to 7 weeks. His sophomore year was short-lived as James only played 2 games and 11 tackles and an interception. He was granted a red shirt for his following year, and as a redshirted sophomore in 2017, he played in 12 games, finishing with 84 tackles, 2 interceptions, 11 passes defended, and a sack. James decided he would forego his 2 years of eligibility to enter the 2018 NFL Draft. Now, there are some red flags here. There are some question marks. And that's why I like this fit. Because thus far, San Francisco has taken on the red flags, taken on the question marks, but with players with high athleticism. You look at Marquise Goodwin. You look at Jimmy Garoppolo. That was not an easy trade to make. although San Francisco might have needed a quarterback so badly, which they did, it's C.J. Beathard out there slinging the ball around. Nothing against C.J. Beathard, but he's not Jimmy Garoppolo. There was a real chance, a real risk in making this trade for Garoppolo. And furthermore, had he played badly, which they said we're not going to rush him in there, we're going to put him in there if need be, but had that ended badly, this season, would they have re-signed him? I don't know. I can't answer that. I can only go off of what actually happened. And what actually happened was Jimmy Garoppolo played very well, and they paid him as the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. So you got to back that decision up. You got to say, well, you got to pat them on the back and say, thus far, while one would say that they've taken chances, these chances have hit the ball out of the park. They really have. To use a baseball analogy, they've hit the ball out of the park. Reuben Foster was a guy that they drafted that has some off-the-field issues already, which is not good. I don't know the extent of those off-the-field off-the-field issues. I'm mixing my words up a lot today. But anyway, Derwin James is a guy that you add with who they have on that defense, and they're only going to get better. I really like this kid a lot. I think he can play. I think he's a top 10 player, which is why I have him slotted at 9th overall. Derwin James gets passed over. He goes very quickly after the Niners pick. And some mock draft people and some NFL analysts have put James in there as the 5th best player in this draft, in the top 5, as a top 5 talent level player, and I would agree with him. A mock draft are going on team need and who wants to get a quarterback and all that fun stuff, but just player for player, a quote-unquote big board, Derwin James is up there. He belongs. So I'm very excited to see how this kid turns out. Wherever he goes, I think he's going to make an immediate impact, and I'd like to see him become a Niner. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was 32 picks in 32 days. Again, people, the best way to tune into the show is on youtube.com, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Each and every episode of the Thomas Take is on that channel, as well as some new invented playlists where you can tune into everything 32 picks in 32 days, everything combat sports and entertainment, and everything Buffalo Bills, NFL football, and or NCAA football. And obviously hockey and baseball. Making those playlists probably today. So if you don't see those on there, don't be alarmed. But the two that are on there right now, combat sports and entertainment. We got some MMA news today to talk about, as well as 32 picks in 32 days. Those are the two playlists that are out there right now. You can also follow me on Twitter at Thomas Takeover. Really appreciate everybody that's reached out and said positive things about the show. You can also check out some Thomas Take merchandise. How about that? Check out some Thomas Take merchandise on teespring.com. Long sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs. Those are all available on teespring.com, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Very excited to say that the merchandise sales have been going very well. Really appreciate everybody that has contributed. And, we'll be repping the TT. I love my logo. Love my logo. Love the logo that my buddy Tom Frew designed that was the Buffalo with the Thomas Take Sports Podcast underneath it. That has really popped on the royal blue or the black or the light blue. It's really popped. So thank you all so much. We'll be right back. We'll be talking about Max Holloway stepping in for Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, which will be the new lightweight title fight, which will take place this Saturday night on pay-per-view. We'll be right back.